So the Grey Cup happened last night in Winnipeg, and this one was a big deal, not because of what was happening on the field, but also because there is so much focus right now on Canadian patriotism. So did the Grey Cup meet the moment? My name is Elamin Abdelmahmoud. This show is called Commotion. Tara Slone is here. Morgan Campbell's here. Hello to both of you.
Hello.
How's it going, friends? I'm delighted to do this. I don't think we talk enough about the Grey Cup, so we're going to do it today. And I think the best place to start is right here.
A second down and 2 from the 3. Shea Patterson. Ball comes out. Who has it? What a turnover this would be for the Rough Riders. He tried to push it in, and it's Saskatchewan football in the hands of Kearney.
You hear the drama. That was this heartbreak or a fumble that Montreal really felt. The Alouettes they're on the verge of tying it with the Rough Riders in the fourth. They drop the ball right there at the end zone. They throw this big Hail Mary. This is the stuff that usually makes a show, a football final, entertaining. The idea that you get so close, but then at the end, the Rough Riders still end up going to win. Morgan, the idea of a final being this entertaining, that's usually what you want. How would you rate this Grey Cup final in terms of entertainment value?
Couple of things. It was a quintessentially Canadian football game for a couple of reasons. One, the first point was scored in this game on a rouge, which is an only in Canada quirk of football that's going away next year. We're going to talk about that later. And two, Montreal's down 2 scores late in the game, and in American football, it's easier to run out the clock because you have 4 downs. You hand the ball to the running back. But because Canadian football, you only have 3 downs, there's a lot more possessions. It's a lot harder to shorten the game. So Montreal, because the possessions turn back and forth so often, gets back in the game, gets to the doorstep. And how fitting is this? That Shea Patterson's trying to sneak this ball across the goal line. Canadian cornerback named Tavon Campbell, no relation, pops the ball out, and the fumble recovery is by M. Kearney.
First of all, I appreciate they have to say no relation every time you say the name Campbell, just anywhere. But also, Tara, these are things that I did not know because I'm not a regular person. I don't regularly engage with the Grey Cup, shall we say. It was also not a part of your sporting diet. You watched this final. Are you into it?
Yeah, I'm a sports fan. So anytime there's this kind of tension, obviously, I know for Saskatchewan especially, it was a really big deal.
Yeah.
I knew Winnipeg was going to be hopping. So, I think it had all the tension and all the drama that you want. Am I interested? Will this draw me to the sport moving forward? Probably not. I just, once a year I'll pay attention.
So the reason we're having this conversation is because so much of this year has been informed by sort of us saying, what we need to do is engage with Canadian entertainment institutions. So that includes, sporting institutions. And so we kind of arrive at this moment, in February and March, we're having all those conversations about the annexation threats and the 51st state rhetoric and turning inwards and saying, what do we have in this country? Well, Prime Minister Mark Carney, M. Carney, showed up yesterday at the Grey Cup to do the pregame coin toss, and here's how that went.
Now for the coin toss. Joining the team captains is the Prime Minister of Canada, le Premier Ministre du Canada, Mark Carney, and the CEO of Coinbase Canada, Lucas Matheson.
Morgan, you don't hear that and go, that's the warmest possible reception. No. Tell me about this year's Grey Cup sort of climate compared to, the previous years, just given everything that's happening politically this year.
Well, that's exactly it. This is the first Grey Cup to take place while Canada and the United States are feuding. Because the thing about the CFL, too, is that it's the Canadian Football League, but around half the players are American. Mm-hmm. And so it's one thing to say we are going to invest our time, our emotion, our energy, our dollars as sports fans in this Canadian product, but there's really no such thing as that sort of cultural firewall because half these players are American, and we, in Canada, in the CFL, we're not going to say make Canada great again, send all these American players home.
Yeah,
that's not going to happen. It would be a diminished product if we did that. And so, yes, Canada and the United States are beefing, but it's more President Trump is finding people to beef with, and that has nothing to do with what happens on the field in the CFL. But just again, the idea that we can keep these two things separate is a little overrated.
Well, see, the thing that I'm trying to do, maybe I'll put this to you, Tara. The thing that I'm trying to do is place the Grey Cup in a continuum, right? The idea that you had the Four Nations tournament in hockey in February, and that becomes this sort of large boost of national pride. You have the Blue Jays, and we talked about how not that many players on the Blue Jays are in fact Canadian themselves, but the Blue Jays World Series run becomes another sort of high point, shall we say, of engagement with Canadian national pride. I'm not sure the Grey Cup sort of elicits the same thing. At least that's my read of it. When I would have thought there would be a natural outlet for that. Was I mistaken to sort of think that this might be an equal site, shall we say, of excitement in the stuff that we're doing here?
Well, the other, the tournament you're talking about, the Four Nations, that really was America versus Canada.
That's true.
So
yes.
That pitted these two countries opposite each other at a time where this was really inflamed.
Yeah.
So I just think the Grey Cup, it's two Canadian teams.
Right.
And I don't know if I'm kind of going too far into the future here, but for me, I don't think the CFL has made up its mind about what it is. And I feel like these rule changes, this waffling, is it American-ish? Is it distinctly Canadian? I don't know, but I don't feel like we have the same kind of ownership over the CFL that we feel over the sport of hockey or the Toronto Blue Jays as Canada's only MLB team.
To that point, I think the Grey Cup has been working towards eliminating some of the distinctions, a bit in terms of the ways that the game is played, here and the ways that it's played in the United States. And we'll get to those in just a moment, but we actually have to talk about that halftime show, because the halftime show is one of those places where you can sense that idea, right? You can sense this idea of okay, if you are trying to say we are distinctly Canadian, you might look to see, hey, this is a place, where you would program or make certain choices. Maybe get a homegrown star for that particular town. Instead, you get this guy.
I want something else to get me through this semi-charm kind of life. Baby, I want something else. I'm not listening when you say good.
Fine. That's MGK, formerly known as Machine Gun Kelly. He did the halftime show yesterday, but also, of course, he's performing a cover of Semi-Charmed Life there. But there is something about the Americans who have done the halftime show in the last few years at the Grey Cup that doesn't feel, it's of a piece to me with what the Grey Cup is trying to do, right? So, Tara, first let me ask you, what did you think of MGK's performance? I think that's important to begin there.
Well, I was scrolling through Twitter, X, whatever it is, and trying to kind of take the temperature, and I saw one tweet that just said, that was a perfectly acceptable halftime show. And I thought, okay, he was fine.
Yeah.
He was fine.
Fine.
But, I think this trend of, I'm going to make people mad. This trend of bringing in kind of B-list American talent to headline our halftime shows is not why? Let's bring in the A-listers of Canada. It's my problem with the CFL not deciding what it is. If you want to be a Canadian product, then be Canadian.
Oh, so the pre-show, I should say, was Our Lady Peace.
Yes.
A-lister Canadian band. But then but by the time you get to the halftime show, the last couple of years they've gotten the Jonas Brothers. They've gotten Green Day.
Okay, Green Day's B+. Well, no, they're not. It's been a long time since they've been A+.
Let me ask you, Morgan. How do you feel about this idea of MGK, Green Day doing the Grey Cup halftime show?
One, for MGK, I'll give him credit. He can carry a tune. He's not a great vocalist, but he can carry a tune, as opposed to
And that's my bar for a halftime show also. You know what I mean?
Our Lady Peace was playing pregame, and my daughter, she's 6 years old, she turned to me, she said, "Daddy, why is that man yelling? Why isn't he singing?"
I will not have rain made a slander at this table. No, sir.
The point is, the CFL, they know they're the CFL. The Grey Cup is the Grey Cup, and your halftime performer has to be available and inclined to get out here in the cold weather and perform.
We are raising the bar.
And so A-list Canadians, like The Weeknd, he ain't doing that show. Celine Dion ain't flying back from Las Vegas to do that show. And so,
but they used to get Shania Twain.
Also,
they used to.
Yes,
not that long ago, even, right?
Yes. But also the idea that the performer should have some type of organic connection to that the halftime performance should have some type of organic connection to the game site. That's a little bit overrated. Like, you look at the Super Bowl, they had The Weeknd. He's Canadian. Like, Shakira has performed there, and there's maybe one Colombian player in the entire NFL, and he grew up in the U.S. Do you see what I'm saying? So that's a little bit overrated. And that's what we do like as Monday morning quarterbacks. And the reality is, like, I don't know who is like a big name, who says Canada. Are you gonna like? I don't think Stompin' Tom Connors is around
The
anymore.
Guess Who.
Winnipeg.
That could happen.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. Here's what I'm trying to get at is that
I was gonna say Honeymoon Suite because they go hard.
Here's
in their 80s.
Here's my worry, Morgan. Here's genuinely my worry is that and this is of a piece with the rule changes, right? Like, so the rule changes that the CFL is about to introduce is that there appears to be more of a play to say, how do we broaden the audience to also maybe engage more American audiences in there? And that includes changing the number of downs. For example, Canadian football has always had 3 downs. It's gonna become 4.
No, that's not true.
Oh, sorry.
No,
Okay, all right.
no,
Why don't you run through the rule changes, the things that are going to change?
I can't remember all of them because they're going to do something with the play clock in the final 2 minutes. But the big ones that people are going to notice in the 2027 season are the field's going to get shorter. So instead of 110 yards between goal lines, it's going to shrink to 100, which is the same length as an American field. And instead of the really deep 20-yard end zones, they're going to shrink to 15-yard end zones. And instead of the goalposts at the front of the end zone, the goalposts are moving to the back of the end zone. So that's going to change. In theory, all these rule changes are supposed to encourage more offense, more chance taking, more points. I don't know how that's going to work in practice, but this is how it's going to work in theory. But the thing was, when the CFL announced these changes, they're pretty universally panned unless you worked like for TSN and you're partnered with the CFL and you're on board with this.
Yeah.
And
Why were they panned? Why were they panned?
Because they were seen as sort of this incremental Americanizing of the game. Because the thing about Canadian football is it is very different from American football, and the people who like it, they like it because it's different, not in spite of the differences. And so anything that sort of chips away at that type of uniqueness is seen as an attack on the very essence of the game. Now, you heard Stu Johnson, the new CFL commissioner, this week, sort of own up to fumbling the marketing message on the first on the first rollout and saying what I should have said the first time was that, it's still a Canadian game, it's still 65 yards wide, 12 on 12, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But it was a missed opportunity in terms of if you're going to change these rules, again, so much of it is just in how you package the message. And if you had said from Jump Street that we still play by our own rules, that goes over a little differently. But the first thing people notice is these changes that no one really asked for. And that raises questions amongst your incumbent fans about what are you trying to do to my sport? And are you trying to make it NFL light? Because nobody watches NFL light, because NFL light leagues have been tried in the U.S. time and again, and they always fail. Nobody likes NFL light. So if you're not going to be the NFL, just be something different.
Tara, last word to you. You get MGK for the halftime show, sure, fine. But also, in addition to that, these rule changes begin to come in. What's at stake for the CFL in terms of introducing things that feel like incremental Americanization?
Well, I stand by my original point. I think it has to really decide what it wants to be, and if it wants to be distinctly Canadian, then I'm not exactly sure why these rule changes are being implemented. On the other hand, agents of change are often criticized. I think it will, it's to be determined. So they do need to grow their audience because I'm sure their core audience is who they are. Yeah. So they got to do something. But is this it? I don't know.
They're trying to get you and me, pal. Where are the people they're trying to get?
Well,
we're not there yet.
No, I'm not there yet. I'm not there yet.
I think that's a reasonable place to leave it. So I appreciate both of your time. Thank you guys so much for being here. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Tara Slone is a host with Sirius XM and for the San Jose Sharks on NBC Sports California. She was with me right here in our studio in Toronto. Morgan Campbell is a senior contributor at CBC Sports. He is also the author of My Fighting Family, Borders and Bloodlines, and the Battles That Made Us.